Alright, picture this. You're crouched in a bunker that smells like old sweat and wet rocks, your flashlight's just barely hanging on, and the only thing you can hear is this relentless drip 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 from somewhere in the dark. Kinda sounds like a heartbeat, except, way creepier. Then there's this whisper, some voice that, frankly, you really hope is just your imagination. Welcome to War Files Uncovered, where history's got a nasty habit of clawing its way back up instead of staying politely in the past. Oh, by the way, hit that subscribe button because what you're about to hear. Yeah, this isn't your grandma's bedtime story. This is the stuff soldiers swore they'd never talk about, at least not until the nightmares got too heavy to carry alone. It all kicks off with this suffocating silence. Not just quiet, I mean the kind that burrows into your skull and makes you forget what noise even is. We're somewhere in the forests of Eastern Europe. Think dead trees, mud, and the bones of old wars poking through the ground. The bunkers there? They're like gaping mouths waiting for some sucker to wander in. Built for war, obviously, solid concrete and steel big enough to swallow a platoon. But here's the catch. Soldiers always said nobody ever left those places alone. Something stuck around. Not ghosts exactly, but pressure. Like getting stared at by 1,000 invisible eyes, all at once. Flash forward to winter, 1944. That's when the rumors really started. Guys whispering to each other, too freaked out to sleep. They swapped tales about this German command post, buried deep, with tunnels that twisted around like some sick maze. Honestly, sounded less like an escape route and more like a trap. Guys heard boots marching around at night, voices muttering in weird languages nobody could pin down. Every time they checked, of course, nothing. Just the echo of their own breathing bouncing off the walls, warped enough to make your hair stand up. Like the bunker itself was making fun of you, or worse. Skip ahead a few decades. The guns are gone, but the bunkers? Still there, just sitting in the woods, daring someone to come poke around. Hunters found them, bored teenagers dared each other to go inside. Half came out pale and shaking, the rest didn't come out at all. Fast forward to 2005. A bunch of military history nerds decide to poke around with cameras, thinking they'll just film some rusty doors and peeling paint. Easy, right? Except, yeah, not so much. At one point they're joking around, then all of a sudden, bam, everyone freezes. This door, so rusted it should have been part of the wall, screeches open all by itself. Loud enough to make your teeth rattle. Later, when they're checking the footage, they hear this low whisper coming from the black behind that door. Thing is, none of them remember hearing it at the time. So, you tell me, was it just the wind, or did those bunkers keep a few secrets locked up tight? The soldiers who used to be posted by those bunkers? Yeah, some of them got interviewed years later. You could see it in their faces, the weight of stuff they'd never shake, not with medals, not with time, not with anything. There was this old guy, must have been pushing 90, hands like twigs, voice all shaky. He told a story about one night he got sent down to check the lower tunnels. Picture it, slicing through black, passing rows of bunks that looked like they'd been chewed up by time, air cold enough to sting your teeth. Then, right in the guts of that corridor, his lantern started dying. Darkness like the world just stopped. And in that blink, something grabbed his wrist. He swears it. When the light flickered back, he's standing there alone, but there are these marks, already fading. He was sure, dead sure, no one living could have been down there. The doors? He'd locked them himself. Whatever it was wanted him to remember, and man, he did. But honestly, the creepiest thing about those bunkers isn't just the war stuff. It's what happened underneath. A bunch of dusty files got unsealed years later. Turns out, some real Frankenstein business went on in those tunnels. POWs dragged below, interrogated until their minds snapped, tossed into pitch-black rooms and left to stew in their own fear. Some of them just disappeared, not even a paper trail left behind. The soldiers started telling each other about hearing screams at night, echoing through the concrete, even after everyone swore the prisoners were gone. Makes you wonder if the walls keep secrets, you know? Like maybe the stone itself starts remembering, soaking up all that suffering and never letting it go. But there's one story, man, it'll freeze your blood. 1967, Poland, just another training run, or so they thought. The squad swaggering in, making jokes about spooks trying to be tough. But the farther in they get, the weirder it gets. Radios start popping off. not with static but with voices, whispers, calling out orders in some weird, dead language. At first, they laugh it off, radio interference, whatever. Then the voices start using their actual names. That's when the panic really kicks in. One of the guys swears he sees someone at the end of the hallway, a shape in a shredded uniform, face half in shadow, eyes that don't look like they belong to any human. They start shooting. Bullets everywhere, smashing up the walls. And when the smoke clears, nothing. Just empty space and footsteps fading away like the dark swallowed whoever or whatever it was. Later, some shrink tried to write it off as mass hysteria. But the guys who were there, they never forgot. They'd talk about it in whispers, how the bunkers weren't really empty. Whatever crawled out of those tunnels was still down there, hungry for someone to notice it. Someone alive. These days, the bunkers are still around, just rotting away. Moss everywhere, half the entrances caved in, nature trying to hide them. But people still sneak inside. Same old story, sudden cold, weird burning smells, the creepy feeling that something's breathing down your neck. Some folks say they hear boots marching just out of sight, like a ghost parade that won't quit. Others come out pale, swearing the whispers followed them home, crawling into their dreams and refusing to let go. So yeah, those bunkers? Their scars still bleeding into the earth. Ghosts of a war that refuses to fade out. And honestly, as we keep digging up all this old history, one question just hangs there, gnawing at you. Are these shadows just memories, or is there something really trapped down there, pacing the darkness, waiting for company? Bunkers were never supposed to be homes. Not even close. Whoever built them was designing graves, basically just endless tunnels of steel and rock, choking up the air with oil stench and that lovely combo of wet dirt and rust. But for the soldiers stuck in there? Prisons, man. Not even regular ones. These were the kind that locked your brain up with old memories you'd do anything to forget. The war ended, right? Countries drew new lines, politicians tried to sweep it all under the rug, but those bunkers outlasted the headlines, just sitting there waiting. Waiting for anyone dumb or unlucky enough to come wandering in so they could wake up a little. And when they finally did, researchers nosing around, veterans dragged by nostalgia, some random kids daring each other on a bet, you could feel the whole place shift like the ghosts were eavesdropping. Here's a story you won't find in any official records, but you'll hear it muttered in barracks after lights out, when everyone's too tired to lie. January 7, 1983. Some green Soviet conscripts get shipped out to poke around this crumbling German bunker in Belarus. It's supposed to be a nothing mission, just sweep out the old bones, maybe find a rat or two. They've got rifles, flashlights, smokes, and the kind of stupid bravado only teenagers can pull off. They're cracking jokes, stomping up to the mossy doorway like they own the place. But the second they step inside, all that swagger evaporates. The cold in there isn't normal. It's not just winter cold. It's this damp, creeping chill that sucks the heat straight out of your bones. Walls sweating, boots squeaking, and the quiet feels heavy enough to crush you. Every cough, every scuff just echoes like you're yelling inside a mausoleum. They start off joking, sure, shouting into the dark, laughing at their own echoes. Except after a while, those echoes start coming back wrong. One guy swears he hears his brother's laugh, the brother who's been dead for years. Another catches a whisper in German, a language he'd never learned, but somehow he gets it. Their commander, this grizzled old guy who's seen it all, tries to keep everyone together, but even he's rattled when the ceiling starts groaning and something, a shadow too big, too fast, moves at the end of the corridor. Rifles come up, but nobody pulls the trigger. It's like the air itself is pressing down on them, squeezing out every ounce of courage. They finally stagger back outside, blinking in the weak daylight, looking like they've seen hell, and maybe they have. Commander doesn't write a report. Officially, nothing happened. But decades later, one of those kids, now an old man with grandkids, admits to his family that something came out with him. 4 years, he'd wake up sweating, listening for boots in the hallway, convinced something from that bunker was pacing outside his door. On his deathbed, he tells his grandson, "Never go underground where the war still breathes." And if the war ever really breathed anywhere, it was at this place the locals call the Wolf's Stomach. The name alone gives you the creeps. Supposedly, it was a Nazi bunker complex, but nobody's ever mapped the whole thing. Hunters who stumble over it talk about stairways that spiral down way deeper than should be possible, tunnels that loop and twist back into themselves, doors that lead to nothing but blank concrete. The whole place feels alive, and not in a let's go camping way, in a get out now before it swallows you way. Back in '94, some gutsy film crew decided to poke around the wolf's stomach, looking for hidden relics from the war. They had all the fancy gadgets, batteries charged, the whole deal. So they head down these gross, dripping tunnels, shoes crunching on glass and God knows what. Hours go by. Nothing but rusted helmets, busted beds, and old gas masks with their straps all tangled up, like creepy toys nobody wants anymore. Then, on the last freaking tape, they catch something weird. Down in the lowest pit, something walks across the shot. Not one of the crew. Its face? Total blur even when they zoomed in later. But the way it moved, like its body forgot how joints work. Super stiff, inhuman. Cameraman swore up and down he hadn't seen anything at the time. By the time they rounded the corner, empty room. But on the tape it turns. Looks dead into the lens. Eyes like little headlights in the dark. Yeah, that footage never made it to TV. Producers just locked it away, said it was too much for the public. But come on, secrets like that don't stay buried. Rumors started fast. Wolf's stomach wasn't just empty anymore. It had a permanent residence. Honestly, the creepiest thing about those bunkers isn't even the ghost stories. It's the real stuff they found out later. Some historian types dug up old files in Berlin and Moscow. Turns out, a bunch of those bunkers weren't just for hiding, they were secret labs. Messed up ones. Prisoners used as guinea pigs. They'd shove people into pitch-black cells for weeks, just to see how long before they snapped. Screaming, crying, losing their minds, and the stone walls just soaked it up. Officially, nobody survived. But soldiers upstairs claimed they still heard the screams, years after those doors got welded shut. There's this one guy, a Polish farmer, snatched in '43. Lived to talk about it somehow. They interviewed him in the '70s, and man, he sounded wrecked. Said they stuck him in a cell with one crappy bulb that kept flickering out. Days and nights got all tangled. Eventually, even the guards stopped showing up. He said when the bulb finally died, the dark swallowed him. Then the voices started. First just whispers, then louder, circling him, calling his name, mocking him, listing out his worst memories. He scratched at the walls till his fingers bled. When they dragged him out, his hair had gone snow white. Swore those voices followed him forever. People wrote him off as crazy, just trauma talking. But the folks who'd been in those tunnels? They knew. There's normal fear, and then there's something you can't explain fear. Like, why do footsteps echo when you're standing still? Why do doors slam when there's no breeze? Fast forward to 2005. NATO sends some engineers to check out an old German bunker near the Czech border. Routine job, right? Make sure nothing's gonna blow up. See if the place is falling apart. One guy spots scratch marks all over the walls, like deep ones, desperate. Somebody had scrawled in German, "Wir sind nicht alien." We are not alone. Minutes later, everything goes haywire. Radios? Static. Compasses? Spinning like they're possessed. One guy just drops, clutching his chest, gasping about something cold wrapping around him. When they drag him out, his skin's got these weird finger marks like something invisible squeezed him. The whole thing gets shut down fast. Official report just says environmental hazards. Sure, buddy. Those bunkers? Still there. Overgrown, half collapsed, but the creepy vibe is off the charts. Locals tell kids to stay away. Dogs won't go near them. No joke, they just freeze up, hackles raised. Every once in a while, some idiot thrill seeker uploads footage. Night vision, shaky camera, someone breathing heavy. Then there's a scream, the camera drops, static. The video's gone by morning. Nobody says why. You can bury a lot with concrete and time, but not everything. The war didn't just leave junk in ruins. It left echoes. Shadows that won't quit. And somewhere down in those tunnels, something's still wandering around, waiting for someone dumb or unlucky enough to listen. You know what's truly bizarre about these bunkers? It's not the war stories buried inside them. Nah, it's what's still happening right now, like time got chewed up and spat out in weird little pieces. Folks brave enough to go and always say the same thing. The past kinda seeps through the walls. People hear radios buzzing that should have died with the batteries decades ago, footsteps from men who are just dust now, orders barked out in some dead language nobody's used in a fight for ages. It doesn't feel empty down there. It's like the whole place is stuck on repeat, looping misery like an old cassette that's melted in the sun. Summer of '98, some paranormal nerds rolled up to the Maginot Line in France. One of those bunkers was supposed to be super haunted. Not army types, just a bunch of scientists hauling around recorders and gadgets for measuring weird energy stuff. They thought they'd debunk it. Instead, even the biggest skeptic in the group got rattled. Down in the tunnels, their gear picked up these voices, dozens all talking over each other just out of flashlight range. German, French, Polish, the voices just slid from one language to the next like it was nothing. But they all kept coming back to one phrase, "Bleib unten," stay below. It echoed hollow and cold. They tried to laugh it off, said it was just interference or maybe echoes from outside. But one woman, she was a historian, lost it, tears shaking. She'd seen that phrase in an old testimony, something the guards used to scream at prisoners begging for daylight. Stay below. It wasn't just some sound looping, it felt like the words were clawed into the walls themselves. 3 days after they resurfaced, one of the team was found dead in his apartment. No break-in, no fight, nothing. But the neighbors? They swore they heard footsteps pacing around his place late at night, long after he should have been asleep. Cops shrugged it off. The rest of the team knew better. The bunker didn't let go. And that's just one story. Back in '76, this British journalist, Robert Fenton, disappeared after poking around a bunker up north. He wanted to write a book about lonely battlefields, places everyone forgot. He camped out in the ruins, scribbling notes, taping silence. One day, he wandered into a tunnel nobody had mapped. Gone. Search parties, dogs, the whole deal, nada. Weeks later, they found his waterlogged camera. Most of the film was trashed, but one photo made it. A blurry shot of some guy in uniform way down the corridor, all hollowed out, eyes like holes, hands lifted as if reaching for something. Cops said it was a weird shadow, a trick of the light. Locals? They just muttered that Fenton wasn't missing. The bunker took him. Fast forward to the 2000s, ghost stories about bunkers started popping up everywhere. You'd see these jittery handheld videos online, people's flashlights skittering over endless concrete. In one clip from 2007, a kid's creeping down a tight hallway, nervously cracking jokes. Then he freezes. Up ahead, the dark warps into a shape, a dude in shredded clothes just standing there. The kid calls out, voice squeaky with fear. The figure doesn't answer, just tilts its head all jerky wrong. Camera goes wild as they bolt, video fizzles into static. That upload vanished a week later, supposedly for sensitivity. But anyone who caught it swears the figure's eyes burned, faint red, like something smoldering watching from the dark. You want to know what really gets under the skin of investigators? It's not some wild one-off ghost story. Nah, it's the way these stories all line up. Different people, different corners of the world, decades apart, all describing the same freaky stuff. Footsteps echoing where there's no one in sight, that burnt smell when nothing's actually burning, whispers yanking your name out of the dark, the air suddenly freezing so it feels like something's pressing right on your chest. And get this, some folks swear they've heard the distant boom of artillery like the war is still slugging it out underground. This stuff, it's not just old memories clinging on. It's something else. Something still hanging around. And honestly, the stories that creep out the hardest aren't even the ones you hear from ghost-hunting tourists or thrill-seeking kids. It's what the veterans mutter, the guys who spent way too much time near those tunnels. They'll tell you not everyone who died down there was a soldier. Plenty were prisoners, civilians, resistance folks, people yanked from their beds in the dead of night and swallowed up, never to see daylight again. No records, no graves, not even a name left behind. And if you buy into the idea that places stained deepest by injustice hang on to something, well, these bunkers aren't just haunted. They're packed with the restless dead, the ones history tried to erase, now screaming to be remembered. There's this one account that's always stuck with me. 2012, some French historian drags his teenage kid out to a busted-up bunker near Verdun. The dad's whole plan is to give the boy a real taste of war's silence, show him where thousands vanished. Halfway through their little field trip, the kid just stops cold. Says he hears voices, men shouting, heavy boots, metal clanging. Classic dad move, the historian shrugs it off. Imagination, right? But when they crawl back into daylight, the kid asks his dad, "Why were they calling your name?" And that's when the old man's blood turns to ice. He didn't hear a thing. But the kid swears the voices kept chanting their surname like they'd been waiting for them all along. Stories like that, they really mess with your head. Makes you wonder what the hell is actually down there. Are we just hearing trauma bouncing off the walls, stuck on repeat? Or is there something else? Something watching, picking its moments, deciding who gets a glimpse? People throw out all sorts of theories. Some say those bunkers act like human misery amplifiers, soaking up every scream and stain until it's burned into the concrete forever. Others whisper it goes way deeper, older than the war even. That land was already drenched in blood long before the bunkers got dug. Old battlefields, forgotten graves. Maybe the tunnels didn't make ghosts, they just poked the hornet's nest, opened up a channel to something that should have stayed buried. Alright, here's the thing. There's this last story, the kind that even grizzled old vets will only mention in hushed voices, if at all. Supposedly, back in '62, a bunch of East German soldiers were poking around some sketchy bunker near the Czech border. 20 guys walk in. Just one staggers out. And man, he was a wreck. Found days later, all messed up, babbling nonsense, uniform in tatters, eyes bugged out like he'd seen the end of the world. Dude never really talked right after that. Only thing he'd ever say, just whispering it over and over until he finally kicked the bucket. They're still down there. Creepy, right? Alright, so here's the thing. Anyone who says all those stories about the bunkers are just urban legends is either clueless or lying through their teeth. There's just too much weirdness piled up at this point. Every time you dig around, there's another local with a haunted look, another story nobody wants to tell after dark. Those concrete slabs aren't just crumbling leftovers from old wars. They're like open wounds in the earth, places where the past just refuses to die quietly. The creepiest rumor? People say the bunkers don't just trap ghosts, they literally feed on the living. Yeah, wrap your head around that. Let's talk about Poland 2009. Some college kids, feeling invincible or just buzzed on cheap booze, figure, why not crash for the night in one of those bunkers near the wolf's stomach? So off they go, sleeping bags, lanterns, a shaky camcorder. They're loud, they're dumb, they're having a blast. By sunrise, only one of them stumbles out. He looks like he's seen a dozen ghosts and can barely string a sentence together. When the cops go in, what do they find? The rest of the group, scattered like rag dolls, no blood, no bruises, just gone as if something had gently sucked the life right out of them. And the camera? It caught them goofing around right up until a heavy bootstep echoes from somewhere deep inside. Somebody goes, "Who's there?" And then this voice, deep, scratchy, starts saying their names, one at a time. The footage just cuts to black. I mean, come on, you can't make this stuff up. Usually, these stories get swept under the rug. Accidents, the police say. Hypothermia, maybe. Anything to keep things neat and tidy. But you see the pattern, right? People go in, and if they come out at all, something in them is just off. Like the bunkers chew them up and spit out whatever's left. Survivors talk about dreams that never let go, hallways that never end, doors that open into nothing, voices hissing their names when they wake up safe in their beds, except they don't really feel safe anymore. Ask around and you'll hear it. Once you set foot inside, that place sticks to you. Forever. Oh, and then there's the 2017 documentary Crew. These folks thought they'd outsmart the legends, planned to lock themselves in one of the worst bunkers for 48 hours. Real smart, huh? The first day, nothing much. Just weird noises, gear shorting out, maybe some nerves. But the second night? The tapes, which by the way never made it to the public, got way creepier. The crew's just setting up for the night, and then this voice starts drifting in from the tunnels. At first, they joke it's just some locals pulling a prank. But the voice keeps coming louder, closer, and then it starts repeating their own conversations from earlier. Every laugh, every private joke spat right back at them. The last thing on the tape, someone screaming, camera spinning, then black. Authorities show up, find their stuff trashed, but not a single body. The official story? They just left. Sure. Meanwhile, their families are still waiting for them to walk through the door. Good luck with that. If these bunkers are haunted, it's not by your run-of-the-mill ghosts. Nah, it's something weirder, something that remembers, copies, just eats everything up. Ask the old soldiers. They'll tell you the bunkers had this pulse. Not kidding. Like, press your hand to the concrete and you'd swear you could feel a heartbeat. Sometimes the air even moved with you, like the walls were breathing right along. Wild, right? What if it's true though? What if these places aren't just sad leftovers from war? What if they're alive? Fed by pain, kept kicking by old memories, getting stronger every time some poor soul pokes around inside? There's this legend too, super old, and it chills me every time. In parts of Poland and Belarus, locals whisper about Der Wachter, the Watcher. A faceless soldier, just an empty uniform stalking the hallways. Never-ending patrol night after night. Kids dare each other to call out to him in the woods, or whistle old army songs like idiots. The story goes, if you hear his boots behind you, don't look back. The Watcher doesn't forgive eye contact. Veterans joke about it, act all tough, but you can see it in their faces. They're not totally laughing. Something's off in their eyes, like they've seen things they'll never admit. And then, this other story, barely spoken, like people are afraid the walls might hear. Back in the 60s, NATO had troops in a Belgian bunker for a bit. The guys there complained about this stench, burning flesh just stuck in the walls. Wouldn't go away no matter how much they scrubbed. Some nights, screams echoed through the corridors, voices tangled up, pure agony. One young soldier got separated from his group during a routine check. When they found him, he was curled up sobbing, babbling that he'd seen an entire platoon march toward him. Rotted faces, white blind eyes fixed on him, mouths open in a scream that made no sound. Poor kid got shipped out fast, mind cracked right down the middle. By now, these stories are all tangled together, a patchwork of nightmares stretching over decades. Sure, skeptics call it folklore, just trauma echoing in the minds of men haunted by war. But come on, memories don't carve words into concrete, or slam doors, or fry radios with static, or whisper your name when you're alone. Whatever's down there, it's not resting. Never has. And here's the bit that really gets under my skin. Those bunkers are still out there. Not locked away, not sealed and safe in some museum. Nah, they're hiding in forests, buried under hillsides, falling apart but definitely not gone. Some are sealed, most aren't. Just gaping black mouths in the dirt, daring you to step inside. And people do. Adrenaline junkies, historians, weekend explorers, moths to the world's creepiest flame. Every time someone walks in, the shadows get a little bolder. So what really happened down there? You ask around and everyone agrees on one thing. Whatever slipped into those bunkers during the war, it never left. The screams, footsteps, last whispers, they're stuck there, part of the stone now, like ink soaked into old paper. And those echoes? They're still reaching out, calling us closer, reminding us that history isn't asleep. It's just waiting for the next visitor. Haunted bunkers? Way more than just ruins. They're warnings. Scars in the dirt, buzzing with everything we try to ignore. Maybe those lost souls, the ones who vanished, the voices still calling, the shadowy shapes you see from the corner of your eye, maybe they're not looking for peace at all. Maybe they just want someone to keep them company. So if you ever end up in some Eastern European forest, staring at a rusty steel door swallowed by moss, think twice before you set foot inside. The air will shift. The silence will wrap around you like a blanket you can't shake off. And somewhere far below, you'll hear the boots start up again. Ever felt the chill of a forgotten corridor? Just imagine what's still lurking in the dark corners of war history. Subscribe to War Files Uncovered, because we dig up the stories that weren't supposed to see daylight. And hey, remember, sometimes the dead aren't quiet. Sometimes they're just waiting for you.